Let's crack open a beer and share some thoughts.
Welcome to Hopinions, and we're back once again, and we are diving straight into a crisp, cold lager on this warm May evening, aren't we, mate?
It is. It has been a particularly warm day as well, today recording. I think it's going to get warmer the next couple of days as well. So a few of these might be quite welcome.
What is it we're drinking here?
So we've got Freedom Lager. So this is 4%. And I think they've had a bit of a rebrand, and I certainly haven't seen the cans before myself. And I think they've also been doing it as a bit of a love thy neighbour kind of promo as well, where you can make some sort of order and perhaps you can get one delivered to your neighbour or leave one on their doorstep. And they've on the back, they've got Love Lager again, which I think, you know, to be fair, quite a few people are starting to love lager again. It's definitely we still think it's a growing market. It looks like, it does look very much like a macro lager, I'll be honest, in a glass. Yeah,
it's a brand that I've got to say I've always overlooked, and according to the oracle that is Untapped, I've never drunk Freedom Lager a bit before, and that probably explains my thinking behind something I've always overlooked. I think that their bottles were very similar branding wise, but never really jumped out on me from the shelf. I don't know what it is. I don't know why I've always overlooked it.
It's very weird. I mean, on the back, it says a lager lovingly brewed for 25 glorious years. But it's definitely not a company I know too much about. But what I do know is two things. One, they do have their beers at the Gherkin in London, where we went for my stepdaughter's 21st last year. And I don't know if they still are, but on Moonpig, it used to be under the gifts section. You know, when you go through and it goes...
Yeah.
Chocolates, flowers, and it used to have a couple of beer selections. Freedom Lager was always one of the beer selections.
You know what? I think it is still there because I think I've seen it recently.
And I think that's a good, that's a good idea. But I wonder if that's subconsciously put me off getting it.
So this is 4%. So it's fairly light for a lager. In the glass, it's very, very light yellow. I'd say. I don't know about you, but I've got hardly any head. It kind of almost disappeared straight away, which is, with a lager, I do like a nice foamy head, and I do like that to kind of stay for as long as possible as well.
Yeah, and while I don't want it to be maybe quite so forced carbonation as some of the macro beers, I feel like I'm lacking a bit of life to it, which is one of the things I do look for in a lager. So I want that bit of life. I want that bit of head. I want it to be crisp. I'll be honest, I don't know if I could distinguish it from many other lagers that you can buy popularly.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's really light, flavour wise. Maybe a little bit of a hint of lemon in there. There's a little bit of a sharp finish. It's not as crisp as I'd like. Without being rude, it's a little bit one-dimensional. I think in terms of what it offers, it doesn't really offer a lot of depth and a lot of finish to it. But
it's probably a bit too light. It's the 4%. Yeah. Maybe it needs a little bit more body to it, something to hold it. Maybe that little bit of lemon that you described there may come through a little bit more. It feels like they're trying to give people who drink macro lager a feeling that they're not drinking macro lager without shocking them too much.
My reasoning behind overlooking it in the past is maybe justified upon trying it.
Yeah, I mean, probably should say that, Freedom sent these to us. So first of all, thank you very much. Pretty sure they've got other beers in their range, but I'm just not that familiar with them. But yeah, this one, it's not the kind of lager I'm looking for. And we've had a few good lagers recently.
We have, yeah. But still, we'll enjoy it. It's doing the job of at least quenching a thirst on a warm evening.
Oh, definitely doing that.
Yeah. So while we work our way through this, a little bit of news again this week, and again this is initially following up on what you were saying last week about bars reopening in Germany, mate.
Yeah. So I was chatting to my brother a couple of days ago. His wife went back to work in the pub that she works in Cologne on Monday last week. So effectively, it's table service. The staff are in masks all the time. You disinfect your hands upon entry. Customers are in masks other than when they're sitting at the table. Drinks are delivered. Drinks orders are taken at the table. Drinks orders are delivered to the table on a tray, and the tray is left with the table for them to get their own drinks, to finish their drinks, and then leave their glasses on the tray. So again, minimizing the amount of contact. What they're also doing is you have to give your contact details. So if there is any sort of outbreak, they do the contact tracing. So that's also taking place. Literally, you write down you leave your contact details there as well. So they've put in quite a lot of measures. One thing that was really quite interesting from Paul is that every day of the week, including the Saturday he went in to meet up with one person from another household, similar sort of rules to what we've got. He said it wasn't very busy at all.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, it sounds like there is still a certain amount of nervousness about going to the pubs. Equally, that's also balanced out by the fact that Cologne is quite a touristy destination for a lot of people. Laura works in an Irish bar, which typically at the weekend would obviously be showing all the football from around Europe, would generally attract groups and some crowds. And obviously groups currently aren't allowed because of the sheer principle of social distancing and the amount of people you can have per table. But they didn't feel there'd been any major issues that they were aware of in her particular pub or in the other ones around the area. So it was interesting to hear. But like I said, the point of interest for me was that he didn't feel like people were rushing out to the bars. I mean, Paul took 6 days to go himself. And I suppose from his point of view, if his wife is already working in a bar, he's not really increasing his risk that much more anyway, meeting one other person there. So, yeah, I'd be interested to see how that develops and whether Germany keeps its infection rate fairly low over the coming weeks.
It sounds as though people are, the public are a little bit wary about actually going back into enclosed spaces with other people, doesn't it?
Yeah, it did sound like that. And I think we sort of touched upon it previously ourselves, that I think there'll be an element of that over here. I think there'll be an element of people who will just want to get to the pub. And I think there'll be an element of people who are still exercising caution. Definitely sounds like that at the moment in Germany. I'm quite happy to we're having weekly WhatsApp chats, so I'll quite happily find out and see what's going on.
Yeah, it'll be good to follow that and see how that's going. Well, it seems as though there's a pub in the UK that's actually found a way to get around this as well once some restrictions are lifted. So this is originally, I think the story was in one of the tabloids over the past weekend, and this is about a pub in Buckinghamshire called the Betsy Wynn, where they've set up a system where customers are entering and leaving through a one-way system. They're seated at tables that are 2 meters apart, and each of the tables are separated by perspex screens. Customers are urged to keep their hands clean, much like you said about the bar in Germany, with gel dispensers, and they'll be using disposable menus to place their order via a phone app. And the pub will be limiting to 250 customers, but the premises is quite spacious, and it does have a big beer garden. Now, apparently, a government advisor is reportedly quite supportive of these measures, and brewery chiefs say that it can be in place 3 weeks after getting the green light. So it seems as though it is Oakman Inns, the pubco that own this particular pub, but obviously they will have other pubs under their portfolio. It seems as though they've come up with a prototype that might just work.
I think it will work for a certain type and size of pub. I mean, I looked at the pictures for this pub, and it is a pretty big pub. I think is it on 2 levels as well as having an outdoor beer space. The fact that they would have to limit to 250 customers. I think there are some pubs that we know who couldn't get anywhere near that number in if you were cheek to jowl, let alone with any sort of social distancing and spacing out from people. I mean, that's not to criticise any options that a company can afford to deploy to assist in the reopening of some pubs. But I think, quite frank, it is a good idea, but it works with certain pubs. You could see it working with the spoons.
Oh, yeah,
spoons.
yeah. But again, if we apply that to pubs that we know, particularly like the Vic, that's not going to work for the Vic, is it?
No, there's a lot of pubs I know that I don't think it would work for, even bigger pubs, because of the way it's got nooks and crannies. Whereas the one which the pictures of this one, it was almost like rectangular, but quite wide still. You had plenty of room. I could picture what they were talking about from the pictures. But again, at least it shows that there's a bit of proactive nature going on. But you still wonder and you still worry about how other pubs are going to be able to do it, especially with the fact that 2 meters is a wide radius per person.
It is, and interestingly, there's also been a call this week from the industry to reduce the social distancing from 2 meters to 1 meter. And this was, I think this was originally published in the Financial Times. You shared this story with me. So some of the pub operators are calling on the government to reduce the social distancing. Two big companies in Fuller's and Shepherd Neame, both saying that the UK rules are above and beyond the World Health Organization guidelines, and who are advising people to maintain at least a metre apart. And that keeping people 2 meters apart in the pub is going to be profoundly challenging. Now, that's quite interesting that we're now seeing a little bit of a pushback from the sector in terms of saying we want to do this and we want to do this safely, but 2 meters just isn't realistic.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Now, I can only assume the reason the UK government has gone down the 2 meter guideline is to build in the fact that some people can't seem to manage 2 meters anyway. If you said 1 meter, perhaps people would then cut it down to half a meter. But the World Health Organization recommends a meter. We're doubling it. And like I say, if you're doubling it all the way around each person. So that's a wide area. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. Going back to the previous story, there's so many places I'm picturing in my head, struggling about how you work the 2 meters, even coming in. I mean, the previous place has got a one-way system. Most pubs I know only have one way in.
Yeah, I mean,
and the same way out.
How many times have you walked into a pub and just bumped into somebody coming out?
Yeah, I don't see how you
doesn't it?
change that. The Ale House in Chelmsford, they could potentially do a one-way system. They do have double doors either side. They actually have 4 lots of double doors at the Ale House in Chelmsford. But I don't picture how the Vic would work it unless they opened the gates at the side and had you coming in one way at the back and then one way out at the front, or vice versa.
The thing for me that still doesn't, that none of this seems to be addressing, or all of this that we've spoken about this evening, is what is the potential pinch point of the toilets? Because you've got to still maintain that distancing while in the toilets. And surely the only way that you can do that is by having the toilet entrance is staffed. You've got to almost have someone saying, "Oh no, you can't go in because there's somebody in there at the moment," or "There's 2 people in there at the moment, and you've got to wait until they come out." So,
which again, then that person whoever's manning the door, you've got to leave 2 meters from them as well.
Yeah. So all the time it's more and more space, isn't it?
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think that again feels to be a big. It's going to be a big challenge for a lot of places, and again, feels like it would be a big challenge, particularly for small pubs, local pubs, village pubs. All of these challenges, I think, are going to be heightened by those kinds of venues, especially ones which aren't really food led. So they haven't really built their model on a certain percentage of their income from food, haven't built it on having people seated a lot of the time. You know, that some places will definitely be able to do something, if not everything. I don't see how all places will be able to do it.
Well, I think it'll be interesting over the next few weeks to see how pubs, pubcos, bars can continue to almost innovate to try and come up with ways manage it safely. But this is something we'll come back to again if we've got any more updates about it next week and talk about it again. So while we continue through our Freedom Lager, what else have you been up to this week? What else have you been drinking, mate?
Well, drinking-wise, I definitely revisited one or two beers I've had before at the weekend. I decided to get into the cellar and persuade Michelle that I could have a few cellar beers, even if she wasn't overly keen. And typically, with it being cellar beers, they err on the side of high ABV / impy stouts. So I revisited a barley wine from Adnams, their Tally Ho 2014 iteration. Comes in actually a very sensible sized bottle, just an average 330 bottle, nothing too fancy about the bottle itself. But very nice, smooth, well-rounded, subtle fruitcake notes, came in at 7.2%. So maybe doesn't have quite the same thickness, mouthfeel that you get with some sort of barley wines. Revisited the SS9 from Leon C, their Imperial Stout, which we tried when we went to interview them back in last year. Really smooth, very enjoyable. But for whatever reason, I decided to start off Sunday with Rain Shadow 2018. I don't know if I always fully appreciate those beers come the end of the evening, if I had a few others. So I thought, okay, it's a nice day. I was planning to have a catch up with my brothers that day, but we moved it on a day or so. And I thought, okay, no one's really disturbing me. I took about an hour to drink it, sat outside, my feet up in the sun, strictly speaking, in the shade. I could see the sun. And the Rain Shadow 2018 completely and utterly delivered on everything I was hoping it would be. Bit of smoke, bit of charcoal, velvety smooth, chocolate, no alcohol burn, and none of that boozy hit. What about yourself?
Just a couple, again, nothing new, nothing that hasn't been standout before. Mention to Galway Bays of Foam and Fury, which I've got a small supply of at the moment, and I'm thoroughly enjoying being reacquainted with. I absolutely love that beer. In my opinion, it's almost a perfect example of a double IPA. It's what a double IPA should look and taste like, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm really enjoying revisiting that on a couple of occasions. Another one that I revisited was the Colonel's Imperial Brown Stout, London 1856, which is an absolute delight of a beer. It's 9.5%.
It's a banger. It's a banger, yeah, that is.
It is. It's so good. It's so thick. It's so velvety, and it delivers such a solid roasted finish on it. It's just so well balanced all the way through, and it drinks nowhere near that 9.5% as well, which is always nice when you're drinking a beer and you don't really know what the ABV is doing. But it's dangerous at the same time when they're that good.
Definitely, that is definitely one of my favourite brown beers.
Oh, it's so brown, it's almost black.
Yeah,
in the glass, isn't it? And then the last one, and this is a bit of a strange one. I opened another bottle of Fuller's Vintage from last year, the 2019, which I've got to say, on the last two occasions that I've drunk it, I've not been overly enamoured with it. And I'm still not. The
last time would have been the Hopinions 100, wouldn't it?
I think I've had it again since then. It's just, the 2019 just isn't very good. And I didn't seem to be getting any better.
I didn't fall in love with it either. It was still nice, but 17 and 18 sort of blow it out of the water, to be honest.
Oh, the 18 is an absolute marvel. But I've like I say, yes, it's only been, where are we now? May, so it's only 7-8 months in the bottle. Maybe I need to give it another 6 months. Maybe I need to wait again now until we do our end of year show, where we always do the previous year's vintage, to see how it's come on in the year. But I just don't know what it is about that 2019. It's just not really clicking with me at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sure that some of them do maybe take a bit longer to really mellow out. But I remember thinking, and the caveat to this is I actually still think it's good. But compared to, say, 17 and 18, which I enjoyed pretty much straight away, regardless of how old they were or how young they were. This one just feels like it's hopefully it can't taste any worse, but I'm hoping that it gets better. Whereas the other ones, I'm quite happy if they don't.
Yeah, if they just stay as good as they are. Yeah.
If they stay as they are, I'll still be happy. 2019, I want to improve.
I don't know whether there's something going on in the back of my mind as well in terms of the whole Fuller's thing. And, you know, it's the first year that it's not visibly had a head brewer sign off on it. And so therefore was it actually done under the leadership of any head brewer, or was it just a recipe that was thrown into a machine? I don't know. Only time will tell on it, I think. Now, we attended a online launch of a beer last week, didn't we? Which is a first for both of us. You know, again, there's a lot of innovation going on in the industry at the moment in terms of the way that breweries and pubs are engaging their customers, and this was great to be invited to and to be involved in the launch of a new beer from our friends at Utopian Brewing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there was 25 of us on at one point.
Yeah.
People from the brewery. Obviously, Ruth was on there. Some of our friends and listeners were on there. You know, some of the glitterati of the beer writing and beer communicating world were on there. So, yeah, it was enjoyable, to be honest. I just sort of sat back and watched and listened and drank my beer far too fast. Was my plan of action.
Same here, actually. Yeah, it was the Rainbock Mybach that they launched, which we are going to be drinking later on in the show tonight as well. So maybe we'll drink that one a little bit slower. But this was
probably not.
No, this was a new brew for them, and they've done it in partnership with the Devon Community Foundation Coronavirus Response and Recovery Fund. So for every can of it that they sell, they're going to be donating £1 to that charity as well, which is great.
Which, bearing in mind, I think the prices of the Utopian beers on the website are actually pretty reasonable. That's quite a chunk off the actual list price, to be honest. Now, interestingly, because you actually had to dial off a little bit early after the main tasting, and they started to talk about some of their upcoming plans, and they'd obviously spoken a little bit about the background. Interestingly, they've ended up in the middle of Devon, but originally they were looking to be in London.
Oh, okay.
And you know, that's a real shift.
It's a massive shift.
They seem very pleased to be where they are, and you know, I think that's sort of borne out by the charity work they're doing with the community, with the contributions they're making. But yeah, they were looking at London to start off with. So complete shift of emphasis and what they're aiming to do. But some of the plans they're talking about, they're planning to make a Vienna lager to add to their range. They've also put some of the aforementioned Mybach into some white wine barrels to see what happens there. So they've got some plans, a bit of barrel aging on some lager. Sadly, especially for you and I, Steve, dark lager is definitely seasonal.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to work out the best way to let you know, and I couldn't find a gentle way to bring it down. And I've noticed a few other people seem to be a bit disappointed about that as well. So maybe we just need lots of people to be disappointed, or we can get that dark lager to be all year round, because I think it's fantastic. It's not as dark as the Budvar, but I think that sort of, it just adds an extra layer to the beer. Yeah. Bearing in mind what we've already said about the Freedom being a bit one-dimensional, then I would say that their dark lager definitely doesn't fall into that category. They're also planning a Czech style lager around about the 3.8 to 4%, which is quite interesting. We tried a few of those back in February, didn't we, Steve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Around
that range, just making them very sessionable, but presumably quite flavoursome, and maybe, you know, following the fact that really good head on a Czech style lager as well. And for the summer, they're planning on bringing out a Radler.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting direction.
Yeah. So they really are planning to really play with what is a lager, what styles they can bring out, what variations they can do, and also the fact that, you know, the Mybach, which is out now, store that in some white wine barrels, dark lager seasonal, Radler for the summer. They're bringing out the Czech style lager, slightly lower ABV. There's lots of things that they're planning to do. And, you know, again, part of their ethos is it's all British ingredients. So again, interesting to know how they'll get the Czech style lager, given that very much the Czech style lager is very much requires the Saaz hops for it. So it'd be interesting whether they shift from just using the British or whether they develop their own style and their own take on it. But it was very enjoyable, very informative. The hour flew by, and yeah, really interesting way to do that kind of launch. And because there was plenty of other people asking questions on there. Like I said, I was able to sit back, swig my lager, and just listen and watch. Yeah,
and as we said earlier, I'm very, very grateful to Ruth for inviting us along to that, and for obviously as part of that we got a couple of beers sent to us as well, one to try on the tasting, and we are going to be doing the other one shortly tonight. So,
and just to be clear, Ruth, it was bloody difficult to hold that extra can for tonight.
It has, especially with the wonderful weekend that followed as well. It has been hard to hold that second can back. Well, let's get our final thoughts on the Freedom Lager, and then let's hold back no longer, mate, and let's dive into the Utopian Rainbock beer.
Okay, that'll be a pleasure. The Freedom Lager, it's inoffensive, to be honest. I reckon I could bring a 6-pack around of this to a barbecue, whether people were craft lovers, matters not a jot. Crack open a couple of cans of these. If they looked at the can, I think they'd be happy with the design of the can. They wouldn't think anything of it. I don't think you're going to be surprised or enthralled by it. It's a lager, and it's a lager very much as we know it.
Yeah, I can't add anything else. I can't add anything else to what I added at the beginning either. So we're moving on to the Utopian Rainbock Mybach Lager now, which we were both quite surprised to find out was 7%.
Just a bit. Did not drink like 7% at all, did it?
No, absolutely not. And I don't imagine it will tonight either.
Look at that for a contrast in the glass compared to the last one.
I know, and it's lovely because as part of what Utopian sent us, we did also get one of their lovely branded glasses as well, which does have the scoring pattern on the bottom of it, which continually attenuates the drink, so you're constantly getting fizz coming up, and the head just continues to grow, which I absolutely love. Again, that small little attention to detail is just fantastic.
It does look fantastic. I mean, the can is a 440 can. It's a pint glass, all liquid, and a good 2-finger white foamy head. It just looks so inviting.
Well, let's procrastinate no more. Cheers.
Let's dive in. Cheers. Still not 7%. They're still lying.
That's just delicious. It's sweet. There's some bready notes in there, some floral stuff going on. And then there's this really just smooth, balanced finish that comes with it. And that's just incredible. And it doesn't taste anywhere near 7% either.
Yeah, I mean, it's although it's constantly attenuating and creating that white foamy head, it's very soft bubbles, very soft carbonation. In fact, it's a very soft mouthfeel all over for the lager, almost getting towards an ale-like mouthfeel. Yeah, not so much the bready notes for me, but that sort of slight sweetness and that slightly floral. I think on the tasting, it was described as a bit of almost like a geranium kind of floral note. I couldn't pick that up, if I'm being honest. It was a bit lemony, perhaps, for me, but superbly well balanced. So easy to drink at 7%. I think that's the big thing. Really easy to drink. I would never pitch it probably much above the 5% if I was just being honest and doing it as a blind tasting.
No, it's just got all that balance and that harmony that we encountered so often when we were in Czechia, and you know that just comes through in waves on the end of it. The finish is so soft, but it's at the same time it's just so refreshing and it's just so easy to drink.
Yeah, and again, a bit like our our friends over in Czechia, they do mature this lager slowly. I think this is matured for around about 10 weeks during winter as well. So they really are spending time and money with their maturation process on their lagers, etc. And 10 weeks is what, 3.5 months?
Mm.
So it probably edges Budvar as well. Budvar's the 90 days, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
For their standard. But yeah, I don't know if this will last much longer than the first time round, Steve.
Well, I think we're going to maybe need to take our time on this because we've still got a bit to go.
Yeah, because I'm not confident
on tonight's show. So let's get into this week's question.
Opinions, 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 opinions.
And this is one that we went back into our kind of vault for on this one. So this was from September 2019. We asked this question, and that was, how much do affiliations and associations influence your beer buying? So we had 398 votes. 23.4% said a little, 10.6% said a lot, 66.1% said not at all. So quite a clear vote in favour of people aren't really that influenced by breweries or brands associating their beers with other brands.
Yeah, or other things. I think the association is quite wide, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
As we'll see as we get into the topics, and I think we'll save our view towards the back end of this opinions this week, Steve.
Yeah. Let's dive in and have a listen to what some of the listeners were feeding back. First up from Steve at Beer Nouveau. It doesn't influence me if it's good, but the bad will put me off of buying a beer. John at A Beer in the Suburb. Signature Brew do loads of tie-ins. I've rarely actually heard of the bands, but I've not had a bad beer from them. Either way, it's a factor that influences my purchases.
From Gareth at Barrel Age Leeds. If a brand sponsored a team I hated, I'd probably be less likely to buy it. This is why Rangers and Celtic sometimes have the same sponsor. But more of a turn-off is behaviour, politically or otherwise, of those in charge of breweries. James at James Moosh. Certainly association with a sports team or band I like would have some influence to try it, but obviously not to keep buying it if it's a bit shit. I'm not sure about politics. I'd feel hypercritical at avoiding a brewery because of their politics, given that I also buy macro lager.
Mark Johnson at Mark N. Johnson. 4 Huddersfield Town themed beers across 3 breweries have 5 stars on Untappd from me. So not at all. Not so sure about that then, Mark.
Yeah.
not so sure. Joe Hill at Multiplex Rant. On the whole, no, except for wrestling themed beers. They'll usually draw my attention if I'm faced with a choice. So maybe a bit, yeah.
Paul at UNRCD. For me, I voted a lot. If it's political in any way, it can get in the bin. If it's sporting related, I'd be put off if it was related to a team I don't like. Greg Stinson at Greg Stinson. Happily chugged Chang in Thailand despite it being Everton's sponsor.
From Riverman Brews at Riverman Brews, was about to say not at all, but then realised we've undoubtedly bought beer due to an association with a band, and we will buy queer brewing beers whenever we see them, because then there's normally a tie-in with queer brewing to other charities and associations. Finally, from Rich Taylor, I like Iron Maiden, but it doesn't mean I'll drink Trooper all the time. A lot of these topical themed beers are just gimmicks and try to sell more beer. If a beer is good, I'll drink it again. If it's poor, I'll avoid it. Unless Wickham Wanderers bring out a beer, then I'm all over it. So where do you stand on this one, mate? What's your thoughts in terms of tie-ins, whether they be musical, sporting, theatrical, political, whatever? Does it influence your buying of a beer?
Yeah, a little bit. If you're a bit too politically ranty or a bit too up your own arse, then the chances are I will bypass your beer offering just because I don't go to look at it. I've gone past your tweet, I've gone past what you're saying, and you just sort of lost me a little bit. Positive associations. I'm not sure. I tend to buy beers just based on the breweries and what other people say. I mean, if Liverpool got themselves tied up with a brewery that I love and started producing some really good beers, then yes. But I never went mad for Carlsberg just because they were on the red of Liverpool shirts. My associations will be more be like places, Spoon's association with wanting Brexit and actively promoting Brexit sort of lost me. And the final nail in the coffin was their behaviour at the start of this crisis with their staff. So I do have bias on my associations, but it probably applies to venues and companies rather than just breweries. What about yourself, Steve?
I don't think it influences me in a negative way. I think it influences me more in kind of I'm interested in that then. What way? I mean, you mentioned earlier about, yes, wrestling themed beers. I'm all over those. In fact, that's what ended up getting Brew York on our radar almost, in terms of them. Some of the beers they were brewing was because of one of their beers was named after a wrestler. So, yes, they're ones that I'd buy to give a try just because of the association. The other one, just linking into Rich's comment there, the Iron Maiden association with Trooper. I actually still think, regardless of what you think about the beer, that's a brilliant tie-in beer. It's meeting two different genres and crowds of people, and it's bringing them together in a way that you maybe wouldn't expect to. I was recently listening to the new Camera podcast, and they were interviewing, I think it was the head brewer or the chief executive of Robinson's, and they were talking about how that tie-in came together and how involved Bruce Dickinson actually was with it, almost to the point that he learned the script of the brewery tours to be able to give people brewery tours on launch night of the beer. And that's now extended to the point where every now and again he'll turn up with a group of people who are clearly all heavy metal fans that have won a competition to go and have a tour around Robinson's Brewery with Bruce Dickinson, and then he'll take them around the tour. And I think that's great. So like I say, regardless of what you think of the beer, I think it's a great tie-in. I mean, I was at the Download Festival the year that beer was launched, and Iron Maiden were also headlining the Download Festival that year. And it was great that beer was available at the Download Festival instead of Tuborg or whatever crap local cask ale it was they were churning out instead. It was £6 for a 330ml plastic bottle, but you expect that at a festival. But it was great to be sat in the environment of Donington Park, drinking Iron Maiden's Trooper while watching Bruce Dickinson sing the Trooper. You're not going to get much better of a tie-in than that.
Oh, no, I'd agree with that. And, even before I listened to the Camera podcast, I was aware how involved Bruce Dickinson had got on it. And yeah, the beer won't be to everyone's liking, but it is a very traditional English brown copper red ale. Very much hits the mould, but hits the mould that Bruce Dickinson said that he wanted to be able to experience when he was at concert venues. Yeah. So, very much did a thing. And let's face it, the other thing that Trooper got bang on was the branding.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the most recognisable band mascots in the world. And to have that on the front of a beer bottle, and subsequent many sort of limited releases as well that Robinson's and Iron Maiden have done under that partnership that they now have, under that association that they now have together.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest Iron Maiden fan, but I did try it because I recognised the branding, and I thought, well, actually, this is something a bit different, and let's see what it's like. Is it one to go back to? No, but I've been to plenty of concerts where it would have been the best option.
It's great to hear those views, and I know that poll was from a while back. There will be a link in the show notes to the poll, so if you want to have a click through and look at all the answers that came through at the time, please do. If you still want to get involved in the discussion around associations with other industries and beer, use the hashtag Hopinions, and you may very well find yourself in this next part of the show.
Let us know, write it down. Let us know, write it down. Let us know your thoughts and bitter and lingerness. Write it down.
First up this week from a friend of the show, Will Watkins at Dry Your Beers, who we haven't heard from for a while. So, Will, nice that you've got in touch again. Another entertaining listen. To add a couple of points, Sabro is widely regarded as having a strong coconut taste, and I've only ever encountered it in New England IPAs. So perhaps not one for you guys. Hawksmoor used to have a Magic Rock collab, and they used to bring cans to the table. So I think that was referring to the conversation that we was having about the Thornbridge Hawksmoor.
Yeah,
collab.
I mean it's good though, because like I said, I think one of the problems cans have had for a while now is about the presentation. at at restaurants and things like that. And if places like Hawksmoor are comfortable serving cans at the table and not hiding it, it's a step in the right direction for the canned market. It's another perhaps nail in the coffin for bottles to some people.
From Johnny Drinks Beer at SC18CBL, catching up on a few shows and loving the snippets. With no commute, they now see me through a few washing up sessions. Steve's rating system for Beer of the Year seems a bit like Beery version of Number Wang. Now, I have to admit, I had to look up what Number Wang was, and it's a sketch show within a sketch show that I've never watched. So that reference was very much lost on me.
Okay, well, I reckon it could be really good if you combined your rating system for Beer of the Year with Ashley's rating system out of 12 for men behaving badly. Try and merge those two together, and I reckon you could have hours of fun.
Is it? No, it's not out of 12. It's out of 100, isn't it? It's eight segments in 100 is 12.5 for each segment. And it's only because I listened to their most recent podcast this morning. And they were still talking about it.
I did the same, and I still couldn't quite get the scoring system. But anyway, congratulations, Ashley, on becoming a dad. From friend of the show, home brewer and current number one fan, Sean O'Reilly at Untrulia. Really enjoyed the show again, guys. It set me up for a day of report writing. Lots of interesting contrasting thoughts on FOMO. Also, I'm impressed that you recorded the day after the fancy pub crawl. I definitely couldn't face beer on Sunday after a great Saturday night out. Yeah, we didn't drink lots.
It was a struggle. I have to admit, it was a struggle. But we got through it. It.
Professionals, Steve. Professionals. From Gareth at Barrel Age Leeds. Now managing to squeeze the odd podcast into working from home routine, and especially glad to be able to make time to listen to this week's show. Top guestage from Paul Grant 2. So that was Paul, our most recent guest drinker.
Yeah. Another similar comment to that, Paul at UNRCD, another great podcast, which I really enjoyed on my walk today. The guest drinker slot works really well too. Personally, since lockdown, I've bought 0 beers from supermarket, probably because we shop at Asda. From Beers Without Frontiers podcast at Beers_Frontiers. Great show, guys. I like the guest drinker twist on the shows now. Great input from Paul Grant this time. People seem to really enjoy Paul on the last show, and people seem to be enjoying the guest drinker as well.
So from Irish Beer Snob at Irish Beer Snob. Really enjoyed this one, lads. Kept me company down the M6 this morning at 2 a.m. From Mark Johnson at Mark N. Johnson. Lovely snippet in regards to FOMO. I would argue that some of Steve's purchases, whether it be that recent Siren beer mentioned or the Magic Rock glass, constitute as FOMO a little bit. Even the purchasing of Pondera online, as it wasn't in Morrison's, could fall into that. Not criticism, just showing that we're all susceptible to it and comes in different forms. A nice balanced chat and great to listen to Paul, even though his voice made me miss Edinburgh dearly.
From Josh Howes at Joshua A. Howes, agree 100% with Steve. More social media time equals more FOMO, which reminds me, I need more Pondera. Honestly, I should be on commission for that shit. I really should.
Yeah, too late, mate. Too late.
I know. And then finally from Beer O'Clock Brewing at BO Brewing. Hi, guys. Heard about your show recently and have been catching up all week. I live in Colchester, so it's funny hearing you talk about the Vic and Two Brews. P.S. Our similarity in name is purely coincidence. Please, so don't sue me. I think that's really what a small world, though, that in this whole beery world, that Beer O'Clock Brewing are based in Colchester, which is just down the road from what you could call Beer O'Clock HQ, I suppose. We've got a few questions from our listeners this week. Questions fill my head. First up, this is a bit of feedback and a question. So from James Wiggins at Jimmy Wiggs. Loved the latest FOMO show. It certainly gave me FOMO, especially in respect to the new Burning Sky releases. Not sure if you're in need of show ideas, but one question I'd like answered: how extensive is yours and Martin's cellar collection, and how do you decide what to age and what to split on, and how to split your beer buying?
Well, I have a shelf full of Fuller's Vintage Ale, a few Belgian beers on what I class as the Belgian shelf. He's definitely got a few aging there, a few lambics which are aging.
Do you buy with the explicit intention of aging a beer, or does it sometimes end up that you're aging it? You've bought it as part of a wider order, and you're like, oh, well, I'm going to keep that one to one side.
Yeah, there are a few that end up falling into that category, or it's a beer that I see that I know I want. My beer cupboard is in a fairly dark corner, so I'm fairly comfortable with the beers that are in their aging, but by no means an expert, and it is an element of guesswork when I take the beer out to have.
Yeah, agreed. Similar. I've got a shelf. People, listeners will know that I'm 2 years, I think 2 years out of my 50th birthday now, and I've got this 50 beers for 50 years thing going on. So I'm up to 25 at the moment that I'm aging, and James, if you do want to see what's on that shelf, so to speak, I do have a list on Untapped, which is a public list, and you can go in and you can have a look what I've got lined up for it. So I do keep most of my beers on various lists on Untapped. So and they are open for people to view if you want to. Next question from Adam Johnson at Maybe Not a Fad. Now, Adam, we're going to caveat with this one. We're probably not going to be able to give you an answer. But we wanted to reference your question anyway. With the changing situation for most brewers, bars and bottle shops, should a revision of the licensing laws in the UK be on the cards to aid the economic growth in the sector? Now, had we had that question on either of the last two shows where we had guest drinkers, we could have given you a definitive answer, I reckon. I reckon either Rich or Paul, who both work in the industry in that sector, could have given us a good answer on that. I'm going to probably speak for you a little bit here, mate. You and I aren't experts on licensing laws, so I don't think we really want to approach this question at the moment.
No, and also I'm not clear what, and we're talking about presumably positive changes in the revision of the licensing laws would be. So yeah, but if anyone wants to give us any suggestions because they've got a bit more knowledge than Steve or myself, then please feel free to let us know.
Absolutely, yeah. Hashtag opinions. Let us know a little bit about licensing law. And then one final question this week, and this is from Chicken Dipper at Chicken Dipper. I know that there are many worse things to worry about today, but my God, what is it with people posting pictures of beers in glasses with the wrong branding proudly displayed? Have you no shame? At least turn the glass around.
Actually, this made me laugh when I read it on Twitter.
I have to admit, I've got a little bit of an issue with this as well, because I've got a number of branded glasses that actually do work really well for certain styles of beer, but I will always make sure that if I'm not serving the branded brewery's beer in that glass, I will do my best to try and hide the branding. There are some that are unavoidable. I've got 2 Magic Rock glasses that are absolutely covered in the little Magic Rock emojis. You're never going to hide them.
Did make me laugh, and I'm pretty certain I've seen references to this from Chicken Dipper before, but it made me smile. And as I said on previous shows, if something's making me smile, it's a plus these days.
And that's the end of the questions. Final thoughts on the Utopian Rainbock. I know I've got very little left in my glass.
I reckon we're probably down to about the same amount. I've kept a bit left just for this segment where you say final thoughts on the beer, Steve.
Okay, let's have one final swig because it has warmed up a little bit.
I think the breadiness was a little bit more prevalent towards the bottom of the glass as it's warmed up, but still smooth, still easy to drink. It is very flavoursome, but it's subtle flavours and well balanced. Really, really enjoyable.
Yeah, I can't add any more to that. It is really easy to drink. It's really soft. It's really well balanced. It is full of that harmony, and it's got a lovely soft finish on it as well. And it's a beer that, like I say, it doesn't drink 7%, but you could easily drink a few of those, and I think you'd be in trouble after it as well.
Well, you might find out because I have placed another order. So just to reiterate, thank you very much to Utopian and to Ruth for sending us these beers, the glass, and for letting us get involved in the virtual tasting. But I have put in a bit of an order. One, I needed another glass, so I've gone for the craft beer hour box. And also, I've just bought a box which involved the Rainbock because I just wanted some more of that.
So people will be able to witness you getting completely rainbocked on this weekend's fantasy pub crawl then, yeah?
It is quite possible. That could happen. I mean, there could be potentially some big beers on that show, on the fantasy pub crawl, Steve.
It is, because we are doing a European edition of the Fantasy Pub Crawl. There are still some places available. If you have already booked on a session, we are now opening it up for you to book on multiple sessions. The links will be in the show notes. Session 3 is now full, so you can't book that one anymore. However, the early bird, session 1, session 2, there are still spaces on those. Use the link in the show notes and use the password Monopoly to access bookings for that, and come and drink all over Europe with Martin and I and associated others.
Yeah, and just to be clear, for all those people who've booked up session 3 just because they're hoping that me and Steve may be a little bit worse aware, that ain't going to happen if people don't join us on the other sessions.
Exactly.
So get your bookings in. Let's have a bit of a party before we get to session 3.
You've got to get us there. You know, we're not just going to turn up. We're not just going to turn up sober at 9 o'clock. Nobody wants to see that. Let's be honest.
No one's booked up to see that one, Steve.
All that's left to say is thanks for joining us for another show. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to drinking with you again. Cheers.
Cheers.